God's love never runs out on us. It's an endless supply. We are tapped into the source, which is God's love for us. It floods our soul, and it's out of the overflow of that flood of our soul that we can dispense love to others.
Hey, welcome back to another edition of Inspiring Courageous Faith. I'm Dennis Rainey, your host, and we're here with a very good friend of mine, Bob Lepine, who we used to share the microphone together on Family Life Today.
Yep.
Both of us have given that up to some very noble and great hosts.
Yeah, good friends.
Dave and Ann Wilson have provided great leadership on that. And today we're talking with Bob about really about love and how to learn what real love is all about from a biblical standpoint. And Bob's written a book called Love Like You Mean It. He's a pastor here in Little Rock at Redeemer Community Church. Spoke for a number of years at our Weekend Remember Marriage getaways. And Bob and I, along with my wife Barbara, are going to be on the Love Like You Mean It cruise, which is hosted by Family Life later on next February.
And I should mention here too as well, Dennis, the book, there's a companion video series that goes with this book that's 10 sessions. And this past weekend, I was with somebody from a church in Texas, and she said, we have just finished going through your series in our church.
Oh, good.
It's been great, and we're going to do it again with another round of couples. So for those who are interested in a small group setting or a class in a local church, the videos are about 15, 20 minutes long. And really the video is there to set up the conversation, which is where the real impact happens when you and other couples are able to interact over the content together. So it's just a good way to learn 1 Corinthians 13 and begin to apply it in your own marriage.
Bob and Mary Ann have been married for 46 years, and they have 5 children and 11 grandchildren.
That's right.
And he knows what he's talking about video, because he helped create a video series for Family Life that has been seen now by over 1 million people. And
it's called The Art of Marriage. It was a privilege to get to do that project, and that we followed that up with your book, Stepping Up, Call to Courageous Manhood, and did a series for men on that. And then we did an Art of Parenting series that was a companion to the book that you and Barbara wrote on that. And those video series, I continue to hear stories from people who just share how meaningful that has been. And again, it's one of those humbling experiences to get to be a part of.
And today what we want to do is talk about love and how the Apostle Paul instructs us in having a view of love that comes from God, not the world. And Bob's written a book, as I mentioned, called Love Like You Mean It. And in that, he talks about the different characteristics in 1 Corinthians 13. And I'd like to unpack that in the coming moments and have you comment on the various concepts that the Apostle Paul speaks about here.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the first one, patience.
Yeah. It's amazing to me as I'm studying this and thinking, if you went to 100 people and said, fill in the blank, love is blank. You know, I'm thinking of the old TV show Family Feud. Survey says, what would people put in that blank? Well,
would it be patience?
I don't think so.
I
don't think that'd show up. If you guess that one, you get the X on Family Feud. You know, they'd say love is wonderful. Love is romantic. Love is special. Love is warm. Now, Paul says love is patient. That's where he starts his definition. And in the old King James, it says it this way, love suffereth long. He starts off by saying, here's how we're going to start thinking about love. If you love someone, you will suffer for a long time with them. And I just thought to myself, that's not where I would have started. That's not very romantic. I found myself thinking about how this passage gets read at weddings and how the preacher will read it and say, I want to read to you, if you speak with the tongues of men and angels. He reads it like it's poetry. Love is patient. Love is kind. I imagine the Apostle Paul reading it this way. Love is patient. Love is kind. Like, what do you guys think you're doing?
Exhorting.
Exactly. He's correcting. He's rebuking them for their wrong view of love. Love is patient. If you say you love another person, here's how that begins to manifest itself. In the face of irritability, in the face of unhappiness and unpleasantness, you endure. You suffer long. You are patient with that person. And if you're not demonstrating love. Think about God's love for us. He is long suffering with us. God is patient. In fact, Peter points out, people are looking around and saying, I thought you said Jesus was coming back. How come Jesus hasn't come back? Peter says, he's not slow. God's not slow. He is patient, wanting you to repent. God's long-suffering patience with us when we mess up is the model for what our patience for one another ought to look like.
And you unpack what is at the core of patience. You point out that it means to put away anger.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really interesting because I'd never analyzed my own impatience.
Yes.
Get with it, get to the point, drive faster. Mm-hmm. It's irritable.
Yes, you're irritating me, you're frustrating me, you're not doing things the way I think they ought to be done. Marianne and I where were we yesterday? Where we pulled into a parking lot somewhere and I was driving and she said, are you not going to pull up a little closer to the curb? Don't you want to get a little closer? And I just thought, really? I've been driving for a long time, honey. Do you think I need your coaching on how to park the car?
Of course she does.
So
I've ridden with you, Bob,
yes,
on numerous occasions.
And lived to tell the tale.
I did.
But how easily provoked are we? I mean, here she's just saying, she was pointing out that I had not pulled up close enough. And I'm thinking, that's just irritating that you think you have to correct my driving. She's just trying to be kind. She's just trying to help out. She's not trying to nag me. So love is patient. Love endures.
And I know you have a photographic memory, Bob, so you'll be able to answer this question. But on pages 40 and 41,
yes,
you have a list of questions to ask yourself.
Yes.
You remember what they were?
No, I have no idea.
And I don't have a copy of the book.
40 and 41.
I don't have a copy with me.
They're outstanding questions, I'm sure, aren't you? Everybody should buy.
I can get my computer and boot it up.
They should buy the book and
they
just
should
find
buy
those
the
questions
book.
for themselves.
But it's a good place to start to just have a checklist. Mm-hmm. Do I do these things? And interacting with my spouse or perhaps your kids or a neighbor, if you're a single person in your relationships.
Yeah.
Love is not to just be learned in marriage and family. It's to be learned in all relationships.
That's right. It's foundational to all of it. And I do think it's good for us to diagnose and go, how easily provoked are we? How quickly do we become irritable? What is our trigger? What causes us to be angry?
And what is that for you?
It's the 18-wheeler drivers in the passing lane who are passing another 18-wheeler driver, and the one on the right side is going 63 miles an hour.
And they're taking 10 miles.
The one who is passing is going 63 and a half miles an hour, and it's taking 10 miles to get across. Yes, that's I get very irritable. People who are in my way when I'm driving, that's probably
But in your relationship with Marianne?
I am probably...
I'm tempted if I had a phone right
to
now.
Call her. I know you are. Yeah. I think we've learned to be pretty generous with one another and not to provoke one another easily. Here's what, and I've talked about this. Marianne won't mind me talking about it. One of the things I learned, and I learned this speaking at Weekend Remember Marriage Getaways and talking about this and kind of exploring the subject. I learned that strengths that are overused manifest as weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So one of Marianne's strengths is that she has high standards. And when you overuse that strength, it develops into a critical spirit. You have high standards for yourself, but also for others, and you can quickly point out this was not done right and accurately.
Yeah.
And I would say that could be provoking. That can cause some irritation on my part when I am the object of her high standards being overused,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you had one other point
She,
made.
by the way, would have a longer list for you.
Oh, I
of things that
I'm
provoke
sure.
her
I'm
from
sure.
me. Yeah.
I'm sure of that. One of the things you point out, though, is you point out that patience is not passive.
Mm-hmm.
Comment on that, because I think sometimes people view passive as weak or indifferent.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you give up your energy for what's right, or even to speak the truth back to another person.
You think about God's patience toward us. God is not being passive toward us when he's being patient. He is manifesting kindness, but the patience needs to have a purpose, and that purpose is we are to be allies together in our relationship toward our mutual sanctification. We both long to grow in grace and in Christ likeness. And it's why in Galatians chapter 6, the Bible tells us that if we see somebody caught in a sin, we're supposed to seek to restore that person with a spirit of gentleness. That's what your patience should be leading toward. How can I help somebody who needs growth? I need growth, so humility is a part of this. But how can I help you in your journey toward Christ likeness? And I'm not going to help you by nagging you, but I can help you by patiently coming alongside you and saying, how can I be your ally in this and help both of us change and grow?
And it happens in all kinds of relationships. On my way here to do this podcast, I was going to stop by my barber and get a little trim job.
Yeah.
I was in need, as you can tell. I was in need of a little cut off here and there. And so I arrive at the barber shop, and it's dark. It's daylight. It's 9:30 in the morning. And I leave Tony, my barber, a note and said, did I foul up again? Because I had fouled up before. And not long after that, the phone rings, and it's Tony. And he said, Dennis, I failed to give you a call back. I had you on the list, but somehow that dropped through the cracks. And I'm in need of some grace. And I told Tony, I said, Tony, remember the time when I completely forgot and didn't call you or anything? You gave me grace. And I think that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
As you have received, and even if you haven't received,
Yep.
Be aggressive in being overly patient. And I want to go on to the next in the list that's in 1 Corinthians 13. That's a good segue to
kindness.
Love is patient and kind.
Yeah. Well, let me just comment on something you said. As you have received, and even as you haven't received, you may not receive patience back or grace back from your spouse.
That's correct.
But you have received patience and grace from God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the source. In fact, by the time we get to the end of this book, one of the things I point out is when you feel like I've got no love left to give, there is an endless supply available. God is super abundant in his supply of love. And if you are out of love for your spouse, it's because you have not stopped to contemplate God's great love for you. You have not allowed God to fill you up freshly with his love.
Mm-hmm.
When you are filled up with his love, when you're filled up with his patience toward you, when you're humbled by his patience toward you, then it enables you more easily to extend patience to someone else. And yeah, the subject of kindness, the thing that was interesting to me as I dug into this is that kindness is very different than niceness. We tend to think of those as a synonym. Niceness is a pleasant demeanor or being pleasant towards somebody else. Kindness is work boots. In fact, one of the authors I quote in there says, kindness is love in work boots. You are proactively seeking the good of another person. That's what kindness looks like. And so yeah, it's not just being kind in response to what somebody is doing. It's being proactively seeking the betterment of another person. That's what real kindness looks like.
And you quote Tim Keller, who is now in heaven and has transferred his address.
Yes.
You quote him by saying, kindness is a sincere desire for the happiness of others.
Yes.
And, that needs to show up in every marriage, that bears the name of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
If it's a Christian marriage, they need to be working hard for to provide the desire of the other person. Barbara recently broke her leg. Mm-hmm. And for 6 weeks, I became Mr. Nurse, cook, cleaner, bottle washer, everything. And I'm glad I had a video clip that you and I have shown at our Weekend Remember Marriage Getaways numerous times that made an impact on me. Forget what it did for others, but I'm actually going to build a program here on Inspiring Courageous Faith. This is going to be the central message. But it's a professor at Columbia Bible College and Seminary.
He was the president of
he was also the president. That's right. And he said his wife was ill with Alzheimer's, and he said, it's not that I have to, it's that I get to.
Right.
And as I was caring for Barbara, those words echoed in my soul as my martyr meter was coming off, beep, 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 beep. And she wasn't noticing it. She didn't know what it cost me to do what I did. But it really is. If you're really seeking the happiness, the best for the other person, you're going to go out of your way to deliver that.
And I would say it's thinking proactively, what can I do today to bless another person? It's not just how can I sacrifice if they have a need, but it's how can I be aggressive in seeking to bless them, even if they're not seeking or needing my benefit. So this is where kindness really becomes something that we roll up our shirt sleeves and say, it's back to what we talk about in 1 Peter 3, where Peter says, don't return insult for insult,
right,
but give a blessing instead. How can you, in the face of whatever you're facing, say, I want to find a way to be a blessing to you today. I want to find a way to spark joy and happiness in your life.
And I like how you describe it in your book. You call it, this is marital disinfectant.
It is.
Explain what that means.
Well, there are germs that show up in every relationship. There are toxic chemicals that release themselves into the atmosphere that can cause noxious fumes to be there. And this is kindness, just has a way of kind of killing the bacteria.
I like that.
And causing the marriage to be able to thrive and to breathe.
You also quote C.S. Lewis on page 56. And I know you don't have a book, but I know you can also quote it because you know what's in this chapter.
It's one of my favorite Lewis quotes, and I looked around to find it exact. I'm paraphrasing what he says here, but he basically said, if you look at your life and say, boy, I'm just not naturally a very kind person. This is not an attribute. Well, rather than saying, so I'm off the hook, Lewis says, the best way to acquire a virtue is to pretend like you already have it. And I remember smiling when I read that and thinking, that's sly. It's basically saying, put on kindness. Just put it on. Like you say, I don't feel it. Okay, that's all right. Put it on. Start doing it and watch how your feelings come along. Watch how kindness starts to become second nature to you as you start to exercise that muscle, whether you feel like it or not.
And it works. It really does work. You do what's right, and the feelings sometimes will come along,
yeah.
And they'll visit you. Let's go on to the third one you mentioned out of 1 Corinthians 13. It's not about me, it's humility.
Yeah. This is love is not self-seeking, I think is the way. It's translated differently in different Bibles, but so that's the core of what is the infection in our soul, pride and being self-seeking. We lack humility. We look out for number one. And in a marriage relationship, if that's what's going on, if you're looking to say, we're going to do it my way, we're going to go the way I think we should go, that's a tug of war that will not be productive for anything. And so love has to be, this is where I go back to Philippians chapter 2. And you've probably heard me tell this story. You've heard me tell most of the stories, and I know most of yours too, right?
Right.
But
I knew you would comment on this because I've got it down here, Philippians 2, 1 through 4.
When we were dating, my girlfriend said to me, who is now my wife, said, what do you think about memorizing some scripture together? And I look back on it. I'm not sure I was a Christian at this point. I was pretending like I was a Christian. I probably thought I was a Christian, but I don't think I had really understood the gospel clearly at this point. But she said this, and we were dating, so I said, that's a great idea. I thought to myself, why memorize it? I mean, if you need it, you just go look it up. You don't have to memorize it. Who does that? I'd never been a part of my background, but we were dating, so I smiled and said, oh, yeah, it's a great idea. I said, did you have a verse in mind? She said, I was thinking about memorizing a whole chapter. And I don't think I showed it on my face. I think I went, wow, yeah.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, a chapter? Who? Are you out of your mind? Who memorizes a chapter of the Bible? But I said, wow, yeah. I said, did you have a chapter you were thinking about? And she said, I was thinking we should memorize Philippians 2. And I remember nodding kind of like, oh, where is that? Is that Old Testament? Is that New Testament? But I nodded like, oh, that's a great one. So because when you're dating, you're lying to one another about all kinds of things. So I'm making it look like I'm much more spiritual than I was. Well, we started together memorizing that chapter. And I don't memorize things easily. It was something that took some work and some discipline. I don't think we ever got to the end. But I'm glad that I soaked in that for a long time. And when I got to verse 3, for some reason, God the Holy Spirit said, I'm going to make sure you get this one quickly and easily. It's the one that says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit. And by the way, I checked, and the word nothing in the Greek is a word that means nothing. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit. With humility, let each of you regard one another as more important than himself. And I've said for years, 85% of the marriage issues I've run across in talking to couples, if they could apply that verse, and if what they were fighting was no, you're more important. No, you're more important than me.
Yes.
If that's their conflict, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's no, I'm more important. That's what's at the heart of it all. And that's that self-seeking nature that love is not. We've said love is this. It is patient and kind. Now we're on the negative side. It's not this. It's not self-seeking. It goes on in Philippians 2 to talk about what the model for that is. Jesus, who emptied himself of the divine prerogative, taking on the form of a servant, being found in the likeness of man, going to the cross and dying for us. So if you want to know, am I serving somebody really well? I would say, well, have you emptied yourself? Have you denied yourself? Are you ready to go to the cross and die for this? That's what the picture of Christ is.
And this can be a little, this has its own trap to it. You admitted one in there about filling Marianne's gas tank.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is something that I heard Tim Downs, our friend Tim Downs, talk about when Marianne and I were attending a Weekend to Remember getaway. And he said one of the ways I show love for my wife, Joy, is I try to stay on top of her gas tank and just make sure that her car, she never has to stop and fill up her car with gas. And I remember looking at Marianne and saying, would that be something you'd like? And she was like, well, sure, that'd be great. So I thought, okay, I can do that, right? And take that on as a new assignment, and just try to stay alert to that. And so yesterday, before she headed to Tulsa, took her car out, filled it up with gas so that she would be on the road with a fresh tank. But now I find myself kicking myself when I say, oh, how's your car on gas? You need gas? And she goes, well, I filled it up 2 days ago. I was like, why didn't you tell me? You were busy and this and so, yeah. But it's a way of showing proactive other-centeredness and saying, I'm not just looking out for my own needs, but I'm looking out for the needs of others, people I love.
Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude.
Yeah, there's arrogance, humility. See, this is where some of these mash together. But the arrogance or the rudeness, think about the times in marriage when we have become impatient.
Yes.
And when it has manifested itself in things we have said to one another, when we have been rude to one another, rude with our actions, with our attitudes, or with our words, and the destructive nature of that. We know life and death is in the power of the tongue. We know that we can build up or tear down with our tongues, and rudeness toward another person And this is where I think we have to understand that rudeness is really to cutting, insulting words that are designed. Well, I think of Ephesians chapter 4, where it says about our speech, that we are to let our speech be seasoned with grace. We're to say only those things that are good for the building up of another person. And rudeness is the opposite. It's there for the tearing down of another person. Now, I grew up with a subscription to Mad Magazine. Did you have a subscription? Did you get Mad Magazine when you were in
No, I didn't get one.
Oh, okay. Well, Mad Magazine, was humor, satire.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a column in most months of Mad Magazine called Snappy Answers to Stupid Questions. And so they would always have these panels. I remember one where somebody walks into a doctor's office and there are signs all over the office that say no smoking, right? And this guy walks up to the desk and says, is it okay if I smoke in here? And so the snappy answers included, why? Are you on fire? Or, so I always thought sarcasm was a sign of superiority. It was a sign of you showed your smarts by being sarcastic. And in my family growing up, gentle sarcasm was kind of a way you ribbed one another, you poked one another.
Playful.
Yeah, it was playful. I found that was not a part of my wife's experience growing up. And what I interpreted as gentle sarcasm was rude and cutting toward her. And so this is a part of the dance of marriage, to learn and say, I don't want my words to be hurtful. I don't want to be saying things that are tearing someone down or causing them to shut down or to be emotionally wounded. So love is not that. Love is looking out for the good of another person with our words and being careful about what we say.
You paraphrased a couple of these next ones that are in the text. You say, love is unflappable. Mm-hmm. It's not fired up when they don't disagree with us.
Yeah, and see this, we're looping back around. So this is patience, this unflappableness. This is the ability that we have to be resolute and to be firm in what is the right thing to do in the face of circumstances that may come our way, that challenge us, that cause us to pull back. And that's the proactive side of what love is. We know there are going to be obstacles coming our way. We're not going to let the circumstances we're facing defeat us or erode our relationship with one another. We're going to stand together, stand firm, and walk by faith and be unflappable. We do that because we're fueled by loving others for the glory of God.
As Christ loved us.
That's right.
Exactly. I just want to stop here and address you as a viewer and listener to these podcasts. If you're finding this beneficial to you, would you click the box down below and send this on to someone, perhaps in your family? Maybe not to your husband or to your wife. That might be a little too forward. That's a rookie move. That's exactly right. But you know somebody who could use a biblical plumb line when it comes to learning how to love as Christ loved us. And I just encourage you to do that, because we got a lot of people that are viewing these videos, and we want to increase that viewership, pass it around, let others benefit from it. That's why we're doing it. We're not trying to profit from it. I just would appeal to you, pass it on, be a part of passing it on. Well, let's look at the last part of this passage, Bob. And it does not insist on having its own way.
Yeah.
Is not irritable or resentful, does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
That's right. And I'll say I like one of the translations that says love does not keep a record of wrongs, as it talks about this. And I think that's a real warning for all of us, because it is easy for us to keep a catalog of what is wrong. And,
especially if we grew up in a home that did do that.
Right. And one of the things I learned from you and have quoted many times, talking about a definition of what real forgiveness looks like, is burying the hatchet. And I've said to people, you bury the hatchet. And I asked the question, why did you have a hatchet in your hand in the first place? Right.
Right.
Because you wanted to have some ammo so you could hurt somebody back if they had hurted you. If they had hurt you. And love does not keep that record of wrongs.
Well, it doesn't just bury the metal part of the hatchet and leave
the handle
out where you can grab it.
Yeah, that's right.
Bury the whole thing.
It's put away for good, and that's what forgiveness looks like. And forgiveness is the key. You remember Ruth Graham, Billy's wife, who said a great marriage is the union of two great forgivers. And if we don't know how to forgive one another, it's the oil, it's the lubricant that keeps a marital engine running without overheating. You have to be able to forgive somebody. And I think there may be folks watching today who, if they realize that, they would go, I'm keeping a record of wrongs. I've got stuff tucked away, and it's there because if I ever get hurt, I can pull it out and hurt you right back and say, don't you remember how you did this to me? Here's what we have to keep in mind. God, the omniscient God of the universe, here's what it says about our record of wrongs, which is longer than your spouse's record toward you. God has put that as far as the east is from the west. He's put it behind his back. He's put it at the bottom of the sea. He remembers it no more. God has chosen to forget the ways in which we have wronged him. That's the model. We must choose to forget the way our spouse, rather than storing it up and keeping it in a little foot locker and dusting it off when we need to, getting the handle and pulling the hatchet out of the ground when we need. No, we choose to forget. We don't keep that record of wrongs. And the summary of this whole passage, where it says, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
Right.
It's interesting. I don't want to get too technical here, but you're familiar with the Hebrew chiasm, where you kind of start and then it's kind of a cycle. So love bears and endures. Those are the two outside parts. Those are really parallel. Love believes and hopes. Those are the two interior. And it's really talking about the posture of a marriage. So bearing all things. Let me just say here quickly, bearing all things does not mean that if you're in an abusive marriage, you just bear it. People have been taught that, and that's an improper understanding of this. Well, because this is where Galatians 6 comes to play and says, if your husband or your wife, if the abuser is caught in that abusive cycle, sinning against you, the most loving thing you can do is help break that pattern in their life. So you're motivated by love to want to get them free from this abusive pattern that they're in. And so you get help. You call the police. You get a pastor to come alongside you. You get other people who can do an intervention and call this person to account. You get the protection you need and you address it rather than just saying, well, I guess I'm supposed to bear it. No, bearing it means that you bear what you've gone through, but you are proactively seeking the good of another person. Bears all things and believes all things doesn't mean that you're naive or that you're a Pollyanna, but it means that you have a predisposition to say, I'm going to believe in you. I'm going to believe the best about you, and I'm going to hope the best about you as well. This is the mindset we should have. And if somebody's not believable, if somebody's dishonest, if you're married to somebody where trust is an issue, that doesn't mean, well, you're supposed to just keep believing and hoping. It means that you want to get to a place where you can believe them, but that can't be when they keep perpetuating untruth. So let's get our marriage back on a footing where we can believe one another again. This is the proactive nature. We know what it's supposed to look like. So let's use these tools to try to get us back there. Believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And it ends by saying love never fails, never gives up, never runs out, never quits. And I thought as I was writing this about the ice storm that we had here in Little Rock right around the time, wasn't it right around the Y2K time that we had an ice storm? And
Right.
everybody who'd bought a generator for Y2K was glad they had a generator because the houses we were without power for 3 days at our house. And I remember the first night it was kind of like, oh, this is get out the candles. This is exciting. We'll light a fire in the fireplace and so the first night there's a little adventure to it. By the second day, when you can't turn on TV and see what's going on and get a weather report, your devices are running out of electricity. This is really annoying. When you're out of electricity, you run out. God's love never runs out on us. It's an endless supply. And the reason that our love for somebody else never runs out is because we are tapped into the source, which is God's love for us. It floods our soul, and it's out of the overflow of that flood of our soul that we can dispense love to others. So if you say, I have no love left for you, it's because you've forgotten what Jesus did for you. Let him fill you back up with love, and then you can dispense that to your spouse.
You know, in slow pitch softball, the pitcher just tosses it up so the hitter can hit it right in the middle of the plate. And I'm about to serve you up
a little fat one.
A little fat one. You're a pastor of Redeemer here in Little Rock, and I know you believe in the local church. A marriage and a family are meant to take place in the midst of relationships.
Yeah, that's right.
Whether you're single or married, whether you're divorced or an empty nester, we all need relationships.
We do.
On my way to the studio, I was just kind of down, and so I called a friend locally, who knows me very well, and I said, "Hey, could you get together and just chat with me, and walk me off the edge of the ledge here?" And it was refueling. It was 45 minutes for me to sound off, but to also come back and be reminded of the truth. And love is a spiritual discipline.
Yes, it is.
It really is, and it needs to take place in the midst of other relationships that can remind us what real love looks like.
Yeah.
Comment, if you would, on the importance of a local church.
Yeah.
To a married couple today to go the distance, or for that matter, too, a single person, a single man, a single woman. Barbara and I had a single woman over to our house last Friday night, Rebecca Price, who has been incredibly powerful in this community, has a Bible study, had 750 women in it.
Wow.
And she's a diabetic, and she's crippled by it. And it's a tragedy. But we got her together and we prayed before she came. Could we encourage her? Could we just encourage her? Well, that's what takes place within the Christian community, a church. Comment on it, if you will.
Yeah, of course, it is a fat one, and I could go for a long time on this because I believe so much in that I believe in what Paul Tripp has said, which is that your walk with God is a community project. You can't walk faithfully with God as a solo activity.
Right.
That by God's design, there are 50 times in the New Testament where the phrase aleio, which means one another, shows up. We keep getting pointed back to our need for one another and how we're to interact and relate to one another. And we use at our church a description, a phrase that David Tripp in his book coined that I'll give him credit for. He said, we want our relationships in our church to be Christ-centered. So we have Christ at the center of our coming together. We want them to be grace-based. So we are constantly giving grace to one another. We're not always pointing out what's wrong. We give grace to one another. Christ-centered, grace-based, intentionally intrusive. Now that's the point. When we talk about this at church and say we want to have intentionally intrusive relationships, people are like, I'm not sure I want to be.
I didn't sign on for that.
That's right.
But that's where the iron sharpens iron. Right.
It's intentionally intrusive, where we come to one another and say, I need to talk to you about something I've observed, something I've noticed. Or we say, how are you doing in this area? Have you been looking at anything you shouldn't be looking at? Have you been loving your husband well? What's your sexual relationship look like in your marriage? Those kinds of nosy questions that a good friend can ask another good friend and can begin to say, how can we How can we get better at these things that are challenging for all of us? So Christ-centered, grace-based, intentionally intrusive, and then the last phrase is redemptive. The purpose for all of this is because we want to be more like Jesus. And that's what redemption is. It's the process of being conformed more and more to the image of Christ. And if you're not a part of a local church, and I don't just mean you show up for services on Sunday morning and say, well, that was good. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being in vital community with other believers and letting those relationships reshape, reprioritize, recalibrate everything about your life. That's by God's design how we grow in grace. It's not just I read my word and I pray and I do it as a solo sport. No, you need one another in order to be able to grow in grace. And the church is the place where that happens. And it's the place where marriages get strengthened. It's the place, most of the time when somebody calls me and says, could we get together to talk about something? The thing they want to talk about is not the Greek tense on a particular verb that I preached on last Sunday. They want to talk about the struggle that's going on in their marriage relationship or with their kids or whatever's going on. It's in the family. What's the old quote? That family is the place where life makes up its mind. It's where life happens. And it's in the family that the test of our faith is really played out day in and day out. And that's why as pastors and as men and women in the church, we need to be caring for one another's lives, but also be involved in one another's families and proactively seeking to build stronger marriages and families.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed working with you behind the microphone for 27 years on Family Life Today, and this has been fun today to get together. We didn't share any of the real dirt on one another that we could share.
I will tell you, before you just wrap up, I was at Alistair Begg's Pastors Conference a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland, his Basics Conference, and just as the conference was getting started, a young man walked over to me and said, it's a guy, introduced myself, and he did. He's a pastor in a local church, and he said, I just need to let you know that you and Dennis together, what you guys did for me on Family Life Today helped me know I didn't have a background. I didn't have the help that we needed. And you've heard that many times. I've heard that many times. That's so gratifying to know that God would take what you do and use that in somebody's life in a significant way. And it's humbling. And I thanked him, told him I was going to be seeing you soon and I would pass that along to you. So, it's the great privilege of my life to have been able to be a part of that and see how God used that and blessed that in the season that he had for us for that.
It indeed was a great privilege and a pleasure in working with you. And this has been fun today to kind of re-engage around this microphone again.
Yeah.
And I want to remind our viewers, resources like Bob has created, the Love Like You Mean It book, the cruise he's going to be speaking on, as well as Barbara and me. The Love Like You Mean It cruise is available online. You can check that out. We don't make any money off of these matters. And one other thing he mentioned in passing, that both Bob and I have been on the team that speaks at these marriage getaways called The Weekend to Remember. You ought to go online and check these out because all of these things are available and they're extremely helpful. And I think reprogramming us with the truth and mentoring us like this young man was describing, you just talked about, the broadcast was a form of mentoring in his life around the truth of Scripture.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank our viewers for watching and for listening. And I would also encourage you at the bottom here, there's a place for a comment. I'd like to hear from you and hear what you've enjoyed about what we're doing here on Inspiring Courageous Faith. Has it inspired you to take some courageous action in your life, your marriage, your family, or if you're a single person, just to not lose heart in well-doing and to cave into the culture? We're here to help one another really run our race with excellence. And I just want to read again what Bob has exhorted us to do here today. It's the last verse in 1 Corinthians 13. So now abide faith, hope, and love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. Make sure you are a great lover of people. And maybe one of the ways you can love people is by forwarding this podcast to them and encouraging them to watch it. And if you haven't signed up to subscribe, we're now north of 18,000 subscribers in less than 4 months to our podcast. We'd love to have you on board to be able to get these things as they come out. And we're staying ahead of where you need to be going, and hopefully we'll be sharing out of our lives and with our mistakes, our successes, and encourage you to follow Christ all your days. Thanks for joining us, and Bob, thank you for joining us as well.
It's been great.
It's been great. It has. See you next time. Bye.
Go to therainies.org/podcast for more inspiring, courageous faith content.